Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation. Are your spiritual gifts making you chronically ill? Today, I'm joined with holistic coach and energy healer for highly sensitive people, Tammy Goen. Tammy, thanks for joining me again today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to have you back again because you were such a wealth of information during our first recording of concerning highly sensitive people. Um, Let me give you a moment to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So back in the day, actually, I thought I was going to be an artist, and then I took a psychology course, and that was that. So I got a master's in counseling, and I worked as a counselor for 11 years solid, and then woke up one day and I reached the typical burnout, which I had thought I'd been avoiding all of that time, and then realized, okay, I need to make some changes. Did that for a couple years, and then realized I just couldn't do the work anymore. I understand a lot better now, but then it was very confusing to me because I'd always wanted to be a helper, and I was successful as a counselor and did a good job, and loved my clients. So it was a bit confusing, but I ultimately had to acknowledge that I just couldn't do that anymore, and I had to make a shift. And so then I ended up going to massage school, where I also learned energy healing. So that's where I started the energy work piece. And then I did that for a number of years, but I really was missing a lot of what I got out of counseling and being able to help people on that emotional and energetic what realm other than the energy healing piece. And so then I shifted into coaching, and I started doing that quite a number of years ago. And then maybe 3 years ago or so, I guess I started recognizing, this was after the point when I became aware of high sensitivity, and that was me. But I also became aware that the majority, almost all of my clients finding me, were also highly sensitive. And then I really recognized that there was a niche that was not being filled, that there were, my clients were coming and saying, oh, if I just, I've been with counselors and coaches and whatever, and I just couldn't quite get to that place that was so helpful. And now I get it, because it's just that part of understanding someone at that level. So that's when really my practice took off in terms of focusing primarily on highly sensitives, which has been
Ex-
super rewarding. Yeah.
Excellent. So there's a lot. You gave us a lot of information that we will touch back into as we go through our discussion today.
Sure.
Lots of juicy little tidbits in there. Um, so let's start by letting our audience know, what is a highly sensitive person?
So a highly sensitive person, I've learned by doing a lot of networking events and stuff that it's important to not assume people know. If you just say highly sensitive, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, and they don't necessarily know that what that actually means, because it is a very specific trait. It's not a condition or a disorder or anything like that. It's not a diagnosis. It's just a trait about processing things at a much deeper level. It's actually been researched, and there are differences in the brain in terms of the way information is processed. And so because everything is processed more deeply, it can be held onto longer, and make it harder to let go of things. You can get overwhelmed more easily by the environment and by your emotions. Your emotions can be much bigger. It can be challenging to connect with other people, really build those harmonious relationships if there's not an understanding there. And a lot of times, highly sensitives tend to feel like nobody understands them, and they're
Yeah,
just like way on the periphery and like different than everybody, and they're in
right.
their little experience. So but it's mostly about that processing, and so everything is kind of heightened. It's sort of
Okay.
like having not not as much or as effective filters, and being a giant sponge like kids are, sponges, and then pick up everything. And highly sensitives, they pick up on everything in life, and you have to be able to manage that. And if you can, it can be amazing, but if not, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah. So I really was not familiar with the term highly sensitive people or persons until I met you. I was more familiar with the term empath, and I realized it wasn't so long ago, maybe 10 years ago, that all these traits that I had, all these sensitivities that I was experiencing, I wasn't weird, that it actually had a name, so I discovered this. I looked up uh, traits of an empath and discovered that I was one. But I also think I'm highly sensitive. So could you talk to us a little bit about the difference between being highly sensitive, or the similarities of between being highly sensitive and being an empath?
Sure. And I think, just different people have different thoughts on this, in terms of it being just a high end of the spectrum kind of thing, or something completely different. In my understanding and experience, it has to do with the way we experience energy. So highly sensitives tend to pick up on people's energy, on the energy of a room, that kind of stuff, and feel it, pretty deeply. I think the next step, if you're an empath, is you tend to experience that as if it is your own. I mean, you're not just like putting yourself in someone's shoes, or really feeling compassionately for someone who's experiencing that, but feeling like that's what you're experiencing now. For
Okay.
example, having a pain that you're going, what, I've never had knee pain before. What is this? And then you find out, oh, someone that you're close to is having this issue, and you were picking that up and owning it, basically. It's like
Yeah.
yours. And I think, generally speaking, most empaths would also be highly sensitive, because it's a sensitivity issue. It's or not an issue, but it's a
Right.
trait of picking up on all of those things, the energy in particular, right? But I mean, I do honestly know a couple people that I would say are empaths, and maybe not necessarily very high on the high sensitivity scale. So
Okay.
I think there's a lot of overlap.
Okay.
But I think for that piece of being an empath, there's that extra a bit of, like, is this mine? Is this not mine? Wow, I'm having all these experiences. I don't even know where that's coming from, but it's, because it's picked up from somebody else, but felt and owned, as yours, which
Okay.
means that there's that much more necessity for really strong boundaries,
Yeah.
both physical and, and emotional and energetic.
Okay. I'd like to give you a couple of examples. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Sharon. Thanks for joining us, Sharon. It's great to have you here. Boy, several years back, I was speaking to a prospective client who had chronic lower back pain, and she was going in for surgery in just a few days, and they were going to do some fusing, really intense surgery on her lower back. And after that discussion, it was the end of my business day, so I stepped out of the office. I was doubled over in lower back pain. I could barely walk. And so I knew it wasn't mine. I knew, because I don't have lower back pain. Typically, if I'm going to have back pain, it's going to be upper, it's going to be in my shoulder area. So, and then I want to share another example with you. So that would be empath, because I absorbed her pain, right?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, especially since you weren't even aware that, well, I mean, you were aware that she was having that, but it wasn't something that you were consciously, working on yourself. It's like, oh, I got to make sure my, low back is fine. It's not like
Right.
psychosomatic or something like that. It
Right.
just was
Yeah.
picking up that
I
energy.
mean, right after the phone call, bam, I was hit. And, and I was practically doubled over. Then I have a client that I worked with for quite some time, and she was always talking about these thoughts that would interfere, and talking about, wanting to get a handle on these thoughts. And so one day during session, she said to me, I went to a family gathering. She lived in New York City, and she was in a high rise. And she said, I suddenly got the urge. I got this feeling that I wanted to jump off the balcony. And she said, I don't know where that came from. And so I said to her, well, does anyone in your family suffer from chronic depression? And she said, oh my gosh, my uncle was there, and he's been suicidal before. So we determined that, because she knew they weren't her thoughts, she has no desire to jump off the balcony. So would that be considered highly sensitive, that she was picking up on his thoughts? Or is that empathy as well?
I would say that could definitely be both. I mean, definitely highly I would say that if she had walked into the room and he was there and she immediately said, "Wow, he's really struggling today. I can sense that in him. Um, he needs an extra hug, or something like that would
Right.
be very, typical for an HSP response. But then having that piece of, wow, I have this, almost uncontrolled urge to jump off here. This is not my thing at all. Sounds like that'd be a little step further into that, empathic realm where, and then that's one of those good kind of gatekeeper things to recognize when you have something that just seems out of the blue or totally uncharacteristic or whatever, to be able to say, wait a second, is this mine?
Yeah, it's not mine.
And
Yeah.
then when we listen, and then you're going, "Oh, I'm picking this up from," and hopefully you
Right.
know where it is so you can let go of it, a little
Right.
more easily maybe, but sometimes we don't know. We're like, what is this?" And for both, highly sensitives and empaths, the condition of the world is really big, right? So we
Oh,
tend to
yes.
feel that, and for empaths, I would say that that's even more extreme just because there's, without the perfect boundaries, and I don't know anybody that has perfect boundaries. So, without those really strong boundaries of saying, okay, I know this is all happening out there, but I don't have to own it. I don't have to take care of it. It's not my job. I can
Right.
do my bit and let that go. That tends to be, for both of them. But yeah, that's pretty
And let's
intense.
acknowledge Mary. Hi, Mary. Glad you could join us.
Mhm.
Sharon, your thank you. Hopefully, we can give you more help. I know how, and Sharon says it is emotionally and physically and spiritually draining. It can be, especially
Mhm.
for these worldwide events when we don't even really know that they're coming, yet we feel, if anyone is not familiar, I highly recommend you go out and do some research on Princeton University did a consciousness project where they measured the consciousness coming off of the planet during major events like 9/11 and the death of Princess Diana. Um, I can't think of the name of the study at the moment, but I will be sure to put it in the comments section of the video so you can go look that up. So, yeah, so sometimes we might start feeling drained energetically, physically, mentally. We might be feeling weak, and we don't know where it's coming from because we don't know that a big world event is about to happen, right?
Yeah, and if we
Yeah.
don't know, we don't acknowledge or recognize or haven't heard of, high sensitivity, like you were saying when when I was talking about it, you're going, "Oh, this is a new term for me." There's a lot of people that find me the same thing. I just discovered your meetup group. I had no idea. So once you are aware of that, you have that validation, but you also can put everything into perspective more. But until you have that, it can be really, really confusing if you're experiencing all that overwhelm and the exhaustion and the feeling like you don't connect with everyone, or you're not okay or whatever, and you don't know it's because you have this trait. Then it can be
Yeah.
that much more difficult to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you just stepped right into my next question. I was going to ask you if you could share some of the negative effects that your clients and patients have experienced, both in your clinical practice and because they might have been unaware of what you and I choose to call gifts, right? So you and
Mhm.
I choose to call these gifts. Sometimes it can feel like a curse. But you addressed a couple, but I would like to give you some time to talk about more. Uh, we talked briefly about anxiety, self-esteem issues, feeling broken. Um, what else would you like to add to that from your experience?
The biggest one I think is shame. There's a lot
Wow.
of feeling shame for not understanding yourself, not understanding why you don't connect with other people the way you think everybody else is connecting with people, not being able to, pull out of it, not being able to let go of stuff, just not understanding. If you don't understand why you do what you do and why you experience the world the way you do, then there can be a lot of shame. I see that a lot, shame and guilt. So of course, that exacerbates the anxiety and any of the social interactions, and there's a lot of guilt with that. That also is, people tend to say, "Oh yeah, I want to go do that," and you know, schedule a dinner or an event or whatever, and then you get to that point and you're going, I can't do it. It's just too much for me, and then you cancel, and then people are like, "How come you always, you want to hang out with me?" Or, you know, so there's guilt around things like that. The chronic illness direction, though, I would say are commonly things like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, you know, different things that are kind of systemic, global kind of stuff that don't, people are like, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't understand it. But if your nervous system is constantly on attack because there, you know, it's, everything's just so overwhelming, then it eventually breaks down. Being able to, you know, whether it's the immune system or just overall, you know, positive functioning, there's a challenge there, and a big one for highly sensitives is digestive issues.
Okay, great. And so that leads into my area of expertise as a healer. You know, first of all, medical science tells us that chronic stress leads to chronic illness, and so for most of us, it's that buildup of chronic anxiety, chronic stress that if left unmanaged will lead to a full-blown chronic illness. And that's what happened to me. I ended up on full disability for 9 years, not knowing that a lot of this was related to my gifts. And so, you know, I just want to let people know that there is help out there. There are people like you and me that they can turn to for answers. I want to talk about, I want to go back to the beginning of your story and how you had to step out of your clinical practice because of, you know, I'm assuming you were highly sensitive and the work was getting to you. But before we do that, let's see, we're getting interaction here and I want to make sure we address everybody. Okay, Sharon, you live with both. I'm assuming you mean chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. There's help for you. Trust me, we can help you to get well. And she also says it's a lot of work to know the difference in what is coming from someone else and what is yours. I can give you some simple techniques to help you figure that out. If you can learn to do some self-muscle testing, and there are free courses on YouTube. They're not really courses. They're just little introductions where you can learn how to self-muscle test. It does take practice. It takes, you know, you have to, I would recommend practicing every day for several months to get really confident with it. And then you can talk to your inner knowing, your super conscious mind, and you can simply ask, is this mine or is this someone else's? And through muscle testing, you can use a pendulum and you can find out that answer. So I hope that's helpful.
And I would also say that as you get used to more and more honoring yourself and how you feel, checking in with, you know, whether it's your heart center or your solar plexus, just asking. It's like, you know, like you would ask, how am I doing today? And listen to those places. If you have a question and you're not sure, or if you're just trying to figure that out, is this even mine? Just you can kind of get used to that same thing, practicing and saying, okay, how does this feel? Does this feel true? Does it feel right? Does it feel like mine? So yeah, there's lots of different techniques. So those are both really good. Yeah.
And again, if it's a worldwide event, if you're dealing with other people, it can be easier to say, I don't think this is mine, you know, because that particular person always brings stress with them. I describe it as, if you remember the comic strip, Charlie Brown, Pigpen had that cloud of dust around him. And when I think of bad energy people who bring their bad energy with them, I think of them as Pigpen with this, cloud of dirt around them. And when they walk into the room, you can just feel it. if you're highly sensitive or if you're empathic. You can just feel it, and so you know that that's not yours, and so it's easier to identify it and step away and make some boundaries. But back to your story. So if I'm putting the pieces together right, you chose to step out of your clinical practice because it was getting too stressful and you weren't able you had not yet figured out that you were highly sensitive. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Can we talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, and at first it was just literally one day waking up and not being passionate about going to work. It's like, I don't really want to go to work today. Okay, well, that's not great if you're working with clients and helping. And what just happened? One day I was fine, next day not so much. And then I started, pursuing that a little bit, and I realized, yeah, I was starting to feel stressed, to feel the strain, to feel frustrated a lot with the system and that kind of stuff, and just really feeling the effects of all the stuff. And I had been working with a lot of intense clients from abusive backgrounds, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, physical abuse. And, at the time when I started, I thought, oh, that's where I want to go because I could really help so much in a place that's really, really needed. But if I had known about my sensitivities if I had still chosen that, I would have set it up with certain parameters. So I made sure that I took care of myself along the way. Or I might have said, is this something that really looks like the direction that I should be going, or maybe should I shift my clientele a little bit? Maybe that is a little too intense for me, and being able to check into that. But yeah, I had no idea. At the time I went through my graduate degree and started working and everything about the same time that Elaine Aron was doing all of her research on high sensitivity. And so that wasn't part of my training at all. And I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of it until about 10 years ago, and 10, 11 years. And once I became aware of it, looking back, I was like, I can't believe I managed to do that for 12, 13 years. It's knowing, myself as I do now, like, oh, well, no wonder that was challenging. But if I had known, like I said, to say, okay, well, this is where I'm coming from. So I need to do this in just the right way so that I can be the helper that I want to be, but not let it affect me.
And protect myself. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
oh, I'm sorry.
So
Go ahead.
That's how that morphed. Right. So I had to get away from that. And of course I had some guilt around it. I'd spent all that time in school and spent all that money, and I had my commitment to all my clients, but then I had to realize, like, I just can't do that. So, I mean, I'm grateful that I was able to step away from that instead of feeling like I had to stay in it. But yeah, knowing now I can make decisions on, anything that I want to shift into or consider. I can say, well, how will that, so I'm a EFT or tapping practitioner, and I started a course on trauma for working with veterans, as part of this program for giving back. And I thought, yeah, that would be really rewarding, really great. And then I started taking the program, and I realized, I'm like, wait a second, can I do this? If people start talking about situations in wartime or in the things that they had to do, and like, and I had to really sit with that for a while and realize, as much as I want, my heart wants to be able to do that, I think I have to set that limit. And because I don't think I can. I don't think I can catch or not. I mean, even if I'm not owning it, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel those experiences. I'm going to put myself there and imagine. And that's a real trigger for me. So I had to say, no, I have to set that limit. And so, yeah, if it, you have this gift, but it has its parameters, and as long as you work with it in the right way, it can be, amazing for you.
I understand. I do a lot of work with trauma, childhood trauma, adult traumas, car accidents, all types of things. And I live very close to Fort Bragg. And, friends will say, oh, you should work with the veterans. And that's just beyond my scope. That is a higher level it's a different type of PTSD in my opinion. So like you, I don't think I could go there. I just, I don't consider it within my scope. Before we go any further, you mentioned Elaine Aron. I know you're a big fan of hers, and those who are listening may not know who she is. I know she's one of your resources, so why don't you go ahead and give that to people now?
Yeah, so Elaine Aron, she's the pioneer in the high sensitivity field, and she did all the initial research. She has a lot of people that have been working with her since that you can follow as well. But she's got a wealth of information on her website, which is just hsperson.com. So there's an inventory on there. You know, if you're not sure if you're highly sensitive, there's that. There's all kinds. She's a blog and articles and books. I don't even know how many she's up to, maybe 10 books by now. But The Highly Sensitive Person is her first, initial book to explain the whole, which had been revised since then to show. Actually, it's pretty cool because the first time she wrote the book and she said, these are all my hypotheses, and this is what I'm getting from my research and from my my practice, my experience. And then by the time she did the revised edition, she could just say, all of this is now confirmed. So it's kind of
Excellent.
Kind of neat that she was on
Excellent.
that track, excuse me, correctly the whole time. But she's also got, books for high sensitivity in children and for romantic relationships. And there's if you just search on, I think it's on Amazon, it's also on her website. There's a movie that's called Highly Sensitive. Yeah, she's amazing.
Okay, great. So you shared your experience. I'd like to share mine. Again, it was probably, I was already coaching. I've been coaching and working as a healer probably about, I think I'm going into year 13 now. And I was at a business conference for spiritual entrepreneurs, and I kept hearing this word empath, and I didn't, really didn't know what it was. I thought it was more of a, I guess you would say, an adjective. And so I'm at this conference, 3-day conference, over 200 people. And the energy in that room was heavy. And that's the best way I can describe it, is heavy and somewhat toxic. And at the end of that particular day, it was day 2, a friend of mine came up to me and she said, a bunch of us are going out to dinner. Would you like to go? And I had tears streaming down my face. And I said, I can't. I said, for a bunch of spiritual entrepreneurs, the energy in that room is so toxic. I said, I have to go be alone. And over the course of that day, the presenter had said the word empath again. So, you've heard that expression. If the universe drops it in your lap 3 times, you need to pay attention. So this was the 3rd time. And so when I was up in my hotel room, taking care of myself, and I found that I recovered fairly quickly. So that was a big surprise. So I started doing this research, and I found a couple of blogs, the 30 traits of being an empath. And I had 27 out of the 30 traits. All of a sudden, my entire life made sense. I realized why I reacted and responded in ways that I did, why I didn't like to go to big concerts, big events with lots of people, highly sensitive to noises. Now, this is the HSP side of me, highly sensitive to noises and smells and things like that. But suddenly so many things in my life made sense when I realized that, and at the same time, I realized that I wasn't weird. I wasn't broken. I had gifts that I didn't know that I had. And so that's what today is all about. If you have these gifts and you don't realize that you have them, they can make you chronically ill. So thank you for sharing that. Let me see. I have more questions for you. Okay, so we talked about Elaine Aron. The next question is, if someone who is listening suspects that they might be highly sensitive or an empath, where do they start? So you gave us one resource, Elaine Aron. What else might you recommend for them?
Well, Judith Orloff, I know she's a favorite of yours, and she's a favorite of mine as well. And she's a wealth of information on empaths in particular. And then Judy Bjelland is a really great resource, and that's actually on my my link tree is the best place to find me, and I have all my resources on there. And there's a link specifically to her inventory. So
What is
there's
her name again?
Julie Bjelland,
Eland. Okay.
BLL, yeah. So, and I have a link to her. She has her own inventory. There's actually, if you just search online for, highly sensitive self-test or something like that, there'll be others that pop up too, probably some that I haven't even seen. Some are pretty short, and some are actually derived from Elaine Aron's first one, but with people that have worked with her, since, and they kind of make it a little bit more socially connected, and have more of a scale on each question instead of just yes, no. It's, on 0 to 10, where do you fall on each question? So there's a variety of different ways. And then, if again, seeing the movie Highly Sensitive is a really great way to, I've had a lot of people, say, oh yeah, I think that's me. And then they watch that and go, okay, now I get it. Now I'm, hearing people talk about it and seeing the, the different effects and stuff. And, oh, okay. Yeah. So I think that, there's just a wealth of information. You could search for hours and hours, probably for a whole week on high sensitivity. And I have a blog specific to high sensitivity. There's a lot of different blogs out there. There's one, the Highly Sensitive Refuge, which is just information for highly sensitives. They do at least a weekly blog. So yeah, a lot of different resources.
Yeah. And we'll be sure to put your website in the comment section as well. Yeah. I Judith Orloff is a favorite of mine, Dr. Judith Orloff. I have links to her books on my website. She is a psychiatrist. Well, I believe she still lives in LA. So she's really kind of like the psychiatrist to the stars, but she's also an empath. So she comes from a long line of medical doctors, but she knew she was different. And, of course, she had that push from her parents to go to medical school, and she did, but she's also an empath. So she's combined both. So she's highly fascinating. Mm-hmm. I just love her work, and I highly recommend it. So let's see what else we have here that we have not discussed yet. We've gone over a lot. You've given us a lot of information. All right, so let's talk about some radical self-care, some things that people can do to protect and clear their energy. Could you give us, a couple of things?
Yeah, I think, basic grounding exercises are really, really important, so that you can, however you do that, if you have a practice for that already, or if you find, I'm sure both of us do that, and there's lots of people on YouTube or whatever that have grounding exercises. But being able to really feel yourself ground into the earth and feel the energy of the earth, but then you can also connect that with, cosmic energy coming in from the top, and really drawing on all of the energy that is available out there as a support, I think, is a really good start. And then a lot of breathing exercises are really helpful, because one of the things that happens physiologically is when we slow our breathing down beyond a certain, or to a certain level, then our brainwave patterns shift and our nervous system actually shifts because of the vagus nerve. And I mean, you can go into that, pretty in depth, but just by slowing the breathing down, you can manage that shift where you're just like if you think of a tantruming child and you think of breathe, just breathe, and then they calm down. It's a physiological, response. So that's really helpful. But I also I'm a major proponent of at least some kind of mindfulness practice, if not specifically meditation. Some people don't like to, meditate, depending on what that is for them or whatever, but some kind of mindfulness in the moment practice to move your brain away from yesterday, tomorrow, what didn't work, what you're worried about, all of that, and just be in the moment, and allow that nervous system to slow down, to calm down. As highly sensitives, we really need to keep that base level low as possible in our nervous system, so that we have space for all of that stuff to come in and not be, exploding over the top and not be able to handle anything anymore. Really, really need to have that. And it's not just, I know it was a huge difference for me when I went from, oh yeah, I meditate, Yeah. When I used to say that, it was, once in a while when I remember, when I think about it. But as soon as I shifted into, okay, I'm committing to this and I'm meditating every single day. For me, it's in the morning because I think that sets a nice stage for the rest of the day. But every single day, and after a while, I was able to look back and say, you know what? I'm still highly sensitive for sure, but my ability to handle things has increased substantially. It's
Yeah.
not that I don't notice things, they just don't bother me, or I don't feel it to my core, like I used to, with having that peace. So I think that's just really key. And then the alone time, the downtime. So, and I, it's much more challenging if you have a family and you have all of
Right.
these expectations and people that you're taking care of and everything, but having that time away to just be you and calm down. I mean, Elaine, Aaron, and other people will talk about it. It is absolutely necessary. It's not superfluous. It's not, oh yeah, that would be nice, and it's not a selfish thing. You really have to have that self-care and that quiet, calm time to recharge if you want to be able to continue helping people without becoming chronically ill
Yeah.
or acutely ill. I mean, you could end up with something, finally you just crack and you end up in the hospital, or whatever, because your body cannot manage that to an extent. It's that, put the oxygen mask on first and then put it, help everybody else. And if you skip that piece, then you'll get to a point and you can't do it anymore.
Yeah. So just a little bit more input on that. I think meditation is a very misunderstood word. People don't understand that, saying the word meditate is like saying I play sports. Well, what kind of sports do you play? You know, your type of meditation can be different than anyone else's. It doesn't mean you're sitting in the lotus position humming the word Om. You could be praying. You could be doing a walking meditation, which you could get. If you can do that alone, if you can escape your family and your work and do a walking meditation, you're actually taking care of two items at the same time. You're getting your alone time and you're doing a walking meditation. Grounding, that is simplest way. Take your shoes off, go walk in the grass. Here in the South, that's a little difficult because we have fire ants. So it can be a little risky, but we all know how good we feel when we stick our feet in the sand when we're at the ocean, or we stick our feet in the water. So that's another way. For anyone who lives in the city, you can ground without even stepping out of your apartment. Just think of that big, beautiful tree that's out in the local park, and close your eyes and envision yourself grounding, down through all of the floors of your building into the earth, and then reaching out to the roots of those trees. That's a great way to ground. I have a massive oak tree in my backyard, and I ground to that oak fairly often. You can buy grounding mats. So there are tons of ways to accomplish this, because this self-care is absolutely essential. Again, our topic today is, are your spiritual gifts making you chronically ill? And that's what we want to prevent. We want you to be able to handle your spiritual gifts, know that you have them, acknowledge them, honor them, and keep yourself well at the same time. Okay, so additional resources. You've already mentioned a lot. Do you have any other additional resources that you would like to add?
On my Linktree profile, whatever, I do have just a little handout for ideas for self-care, for stress management, and then also an opt-in PDF, basically for a guide for communicating with other people, non-highly sensitive people, as a highly sensitive. And then the other links are on there that I've already mentioned, but.
Yeah, that's really important, because a lot of people are not going to understand that you're highly sensitive. They're probably they're going to probably tell you that you're overly sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll probably say something like, "What's wrong with you? You're always so sensitive." Well, yeah, you are,
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of your gifts.
Yes.
So that's a great resource. Yeah. Thanks.
And that
Thank you
idea of
for
the gifts
that.
I love because, as long as you can maintain good boundaries, you have your tools to keep the overwhelm minimized, and you
Mhm.
are aware and you honor yourself as a highly sensitive, then all of those sensitivities can be your gifts, because
Mhm.
being able to see all the little things that other people miss, being able to see things from all sides, being able to, have that compassion for other people and know what they need or what a situation needs. I mean, all those things, yeah, they can be overwhelming if you're not in that place of, self-care. But once you honor them and you say, hey, this is a trait. This is not, and it's one of those things that's really easy for highly sensitives to not realize is any of those things that they consider positive. They assume that everyone has and don't recognize that, oh, I have this trait because I'm highly sensitive, but not everybody has it.
Right.
So it is something to celebrate.
Right.
But
Because
you
you
have
have,
that honoring piece. Yeah.
yeah, you have a special gift. And as I talked about earlier, sometimes being highly sensitive can be problematic if you're highly sensitive to sound, or smells, things like that. But in our last discussion, which people can find on my YouTube channel, you talked about how your heightened sense of smell actually saved your life. So we'll let them go watch that video to to hear that story. um, and so, okay, well, it's just about time for us to wrap up. So, uh, we know if people would like more information about your services, they can visit your website, and tell us what that website is, please.
The website is lifescape-wellness.com. It's probably easier just to go to Linktree. If you're familiar with Linktree, it was just linktr.ee/ and then my name, Tammy Goen. And that, because that has my website, but it has everything else on there, and it's a little
Okay.
easier to remember. But either of those, it
Yeah,
works.
and we'll put that in the comment section. But if anyone wants to write that down as they're listening, they can do that. Um, and and my website is my name, teresabruni.com. I also have free resources. Tammy, you give a discovery session, right?
Oh yeah.
For anyone that would like to request to speak with you for a few minutes.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So they can go on your website and request a discovery session. They can also go on my website and request a discovery session. And I'm just checking my notes here to make sure we didn't miss anything. Really want to thank you for sharing your experience and all that work that you put into being a counselor and working with trauma, and then waking up one day and realizing that you just couldn't do it anymore. That had to be really, really challenging. But now you've designed a new career for yourself, as a coach for highly sensitive people, and or do I say persons? Highly sensitive persons.
I
Does it?
used to do that to be technical, and then I just decided it's easier, it flows better to just say people, because that's the way yeah. I mean, the book is highly sensitive person, and then so people refer to it as persons, but yeah,
Yeah.
people.
And so now you're able to really help people, and you can, I mean, one of the things that I love about the work that I do, and I'm sure you do too, is I get just as much out of it, I think, as my clients do. When they have a breakthrough, it just lights me up. It makes my day, and
Right.
I could do this all day long.
Yeah.
So
And one of the common things, and you probably hear this too, is that, oh, if I'd only known this, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And it's easy to slip into that and go, oh yeah, but now you know. And not only going forward is the potential amazing, but you can also reframe now your whole past
exactly.
and be able to let things go, but also, be more self-compassionate, because you go, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't change that, but I can change my belief about it and my thoughts about it, and I can let all these things go and, honor
Yes.
myself.
And honor myself, and practice self-forgiveness, because what we look what sometimes we look back on as mistakes, we realize now that we've identified that we're highly sensitive or empathic, that all of that happened because we didn't know that we had these gifts and we didn't know how to manage all of it. Mm-hmm. So we can, practice some self-forgiveness too, and move forward. Always move forward. Don't look back. Yeah, don't look back. Well, I want to honor you and thank you again for your time and helping to educate us and make us all better. I would just like to say one final thing, and that is for any of you who have children, no matter what age, check this out, because you could have highly sensitive children. And boy, if you can make them aware of their gifts and be understanding and compassionate with them, it's going to make all the difference in their life. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Supporting them now and helping teachers and other adults to be supportive for them also. But yeah, helping them realize, oh yeah, you are extra sensitive or super sensitive, not too sensitive, because that's the term that we usually get. It's like, you're too sensitive, or you're so, you need to just, let it go. Don't worry about it.
Right.
All those things.
Right.
So helping them acknowledge that, oh yeah, you're different, but not from everybody. I mean, 20% of the population is highly sensitive. So, you're in this smaller group, but because of that, these are all the amazing things. And so,
right.
You're
unique.
That's what there's like, gosh, if I'd only known this as a kid, my life would have been so different.
I know, but nobody taught us, nobody taught us any of that, especially in my generation and your generation. Big girls don't cry, tough it out.
That mode of being rewarded for taking care of other people.
Mm-hmm.
You get parentified, you get, raised up on this pedestal because you know what people need, and you're quick to go and help and do all these things. And you're like, oh, she's such a little adult, and she's such, whatever. As a kid, you're thinking, oh, this is really great. And then you learn later, that wasn't my job. I was just supposed to be a kid. And, obviously I did all that because it came naturally, because I'm highly sensitive, but there's boundaries there.
Yeah. So in closing, look out for those children. They are our future. And help them. If they're highly sensitive or empathic, help them to understand. Once again, Tammy, I honor your time. I honor your work. Thank you for being here with us today. And you and I will talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it and really appreciate you.
Thank you.